they would basically listen to a hemi-sync tone, and put a blindfold on, lay back, get yourselves in a hypnagogic state, and they would perceive targets. All the targets are blind. You have no idea what the target is. She goes, I just saw an alien with 4 spindly long fingers reach out and touch my forehead. She goes, did you just touch me? I said, I was on the other side of the room. I was completely shocked by this. It's all kind of stemming from the same place. Like, you have access to this information. You're just trying to get your subconscious mind and your conscious mind to kind of work together.
Tonight, we take a look at remote viewing and David Powell, who is a student of the Enigma and has become good enough to pursue RV even further. We even set up a demo to see how well David performs. That and more is coming right up on My Alien Life. My Alien Life is recorded live from atop the Northern Rocky Mountains and is available on Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, and everywhere fine podcasts are found. My website is at www.myalienlifepodcast.com. There you will find my email address, all previously recorded shows, and more. I'm Cameron Logan. This is My Alien Life, and the podcast starts right now.
My Alien Life Podcast.
Three, two, 1, 0, 0, and liftoff.
Okay, dude, this is where the rubber hits the road. I have picked one thing out of this vast universe, and you're going to have to ascertain what that thing is.
Okay.
Don't sound nervous, because it's only your reputation that will unfold during this next 1-hour program. David Powell is in the studio, and tonight we're going to see how good he really is, and I believe it. We're going to make it happen. Okay, I'm done rambling. I'm just trying to make David nervous. Nice to have you, by the way. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thanks, man. I love the show. I'm a big fan.
It's been a long time coming. I wanted to talk to you about remote viewing, and I think the best part about what you do is the fact that I don't know what level you consider yourself, but you went from being a complete novice, and I'm not sure where you think you are right now, but when did this start? When did you decide you wanted to be a remote viewer, and when did you hear about it, and when did you start, and what did that look like, and what did that entail?
Actually, it was a conversation I was having with my dad. He was in the Army, and I had been reading into just consciousness-based things. I'm a bit of a bookworm as it is. And my dad was telling me about the military. We had this program where they did what was called remote viewing, and they were able to perceive targets from remote locations, there at the base. And I guess they had picked up that Russia was doing it, and so they got into it. So that's where I first kind of got into it. Now, everything I learned, I picked up from a book. I mean, I haven't gotten formally trained yet. I'd probably be about halfway done by now if it wasn't for this COVID, but that's what I'm waiting on. But so I had to kind of just do what I could with it. So I kind of researched it, and I realized that the controlled remote viewing, which is what the military was using, was a very structured protocol, and I knew it would take me some time to kind of get a beat on how to do that. So in the meantime, I was reading what the Monroe Institute was doing, and they would basically listen to a hemisync tone and put a blindfold on, lay back, get themselves in a hypnagogic state, and they would perceive targets. All the targets are blind. You have no idea what the target is, which is good because it kind of cuts out your imagination. So the target could literally be anything. You have no idea. So I wrangled my wife and a friend that I worked with, and I said, look, this seems to be legitimate. And what I liked about it was it seemed that if anybody was willing to put the time in to learn it, anybody could do it. It was a human ability. It wasn't you didn't have to be anything special to do this. It's something we all could do. So I'm like, let's give it a shot. So and especially my wife was very hesitant. She's like, all right, whatever, I'll give it a shot. So I started giving them targets. I would assign a 4-digit number to a target, let's say the Empire State Building. And I would I'd write that on a piece of paper, put it in an envelope, and I would tell them the 4-digit number attached to it. But that's all the information they would have. So at first, it was working right off the bat, but it was like small. You would get small, just fleeting perceptions of something, But as time went on, we did this over a period of a few months. We were getting more impressions. We were getting bigger pieces of the target, and then eventually we would have what's known as a bilocation at the target. So as things went on, I was just shocked at how the three of us novices were having such, great results. Now, we had times where we got nothing. We had times where, we fell asleep or whatever. But the times that it worked, it really, really worked. And as time went on, we got, more and more of the target. So, as that was going on, greedily, I'm thinking to myself, if we could perceive these, locations like buildings, that was mainly what the targets were. Like, I gave my wife, the pyramids of Giza and stuff like that. And we would hit on those targets. Sometimes you would get a small perception, and then sometimes you would just literally name it. Like I was at the Hoover Dam. I was there. I saw the water flowing. I saw people and tourists and stuff. So it was a really immersive experience. And we all were kind of excited about it, because we were having success. So after a while, I started thinking, well, if we could have this kind of success, it seems like our consciousness is able to go anywhere, anytime. So why don't we I'm like, why don't I do an esoteric target? Let's do an alien target. So I tasked my friend Joe the tasking was closest alien gray to your geographic location today. Target number 0006. So that's all he knows. Okay, it was 0006. He doesn't know. He has no idea what the target was. Everything else I had given prior to that was a very down-to-earth, grounded target. Okay, and in the community, it's difficult to assign targets like this because we can't back it up with anything. We can't show you a picture of, oh, here's an alien gray, blah blah blah. There's no feedback for that. So a lot of the community gets upset or worked up because, like I said, it's not scientific. You can't verify it. But I figured, if your consciousness is going to this location and they happen to hit on what I tasked them, how is it any different? It should work. So I tasked Joe just exactly that, a gray alien, ET or what have you. So he goes into a session and he calls me back, and I said, well, what did you see? And he said, I was in, I don't know what it was, but I saw these 4 alien dudes come down the stairs and literally wave at me one at a time, So he's thinking that he doesn't know what it is. He's never had a target like this. He's hoping it's his imagination. So I immediately send him the tasking, which is what the target was, and he immediately freaked out. Like, no. I'm just reading your mind. I said, does that make you feel any better that you're reading? You're reading my mind.
That's still pretty good, though, if he's just doing that. I mean, reading your mind is another thing, yeah.
And so that's where the big controversy is. Is he reading my? Well, a lot of people have theories where it's a matrix, or you're reaching into the Akashic records. And the thing is nobody really knows. But I believe what's happening is basically what Ingo talked about, Ingo Swan, is that you're placing all your attention at this one particular spot, and that reference number, it doesn't matter what the number is, but the number is like a focal point to focus on. And once you kind of let go of everything and set all your attention and your intention on that number, you just kind of go there. You're still cognizant of being in the room, sitting in your chair or whatever, but your consciousness to some degree goes to that target. And with it, you get visuals and you get impressions of the target. So, Joe got mad at me. He's like, hey, don't give me targets like that. I said, all right, I think it kind of scared him a little bit, to be honest. But I liked using Joe as kind of a guinea pig because he could get into a hypnagogic state so quick. It would take him 20 minutes and he would start seeing things, getting impressions of the target. As to where, like, when they gave me a target, or if I gave my wife a target, it would take us 30 minutes, 40 minutes to kind of get to that state, till we start seeing things. So I went on and just gave them regular targets, and so I gave my wife basically the same target. Alien, but I always put benevolent in there, maybe for my own peace of mind, so just in case you do peek in on someone, hopefully they're good natured,
I personally don't think those two words, benevolent and alien, go together, but that's a whole nother story. Yeah. Keep going, please.
So, and again, I wouldn't recommend this. This, remote viewing is awesome, but it's not a toy. I mean, if people I think it's a great endeavor to do it and look into it and stuff, but I would take it seriously because it does work. And we really don't know what's happening, So anyway, I give my wife the same target, basically. And so I'm waiting for her to finish her session. Now, she's got headphones on. She's listening to her hemi-sync track. And, she's got the blindfold on. And so after about a half hour, 35 minutes, she shoots up from the couch and she goes, "Are you effing with me?" And I go, and I had not told her about Joe's target previously. So she's gotten very solid targets this whole time. Okay. So I said, "No, what do you mean?" She goes, "I just saw an alien with 4 spindly long fingers reach out and touch my forehead." She goes, "Did you just touch me?" I said, I was on the other side of the room. I was completely shocked by this.
That was on the forehead?
That was on the forehead, right.
That's interesting.
Now, in remote viewing, you can get impressions of taste, touch, smell. So I'm like, this is just bizarre. Now, this is like going back almost 4 years ago. So I had relatively little overall. I mean, I was learning the mechanics of it, but I hadn't delved into a lot of the history yet. And I hadn't, I didn't know it was so controversial to go after those targets, So I get on Facebook. There's remote viewing Facebook groups. And some of these groups have like the military guys that are still, Lynn is on there. Right. Paul H. Smith is on there. So, and Russell, your upcoming guest is on there. And
well, you're the one who suggested Lynn be on the show, and I appreciate that. That was a good show. And so I knew that this was something we could cover, 3, 4, 5 times and still never run out of information. So it's good stuff.
Yeah, and it's just remote viewing. If you have the passion for it and the time, it really makes you. For instance, like I viewed a target. Let me get back to where I was going. So I'm getting on the Facebook groups. I'm asking people, have you guys experienced this? Now, some of the guys that are some of these hardcore remote viewers that follow a strict protocol. Is they only do targets with verifiable feedback. They're getting all over my case. They're like, you can't use it for this. There's nothing to back it up. It's, it could be your imagination, this, that, and the other. And I'm thinking to myself, like, look, I don't know what this was, but it wasn't my imagination. The odds of them hitting this target that I passed them is so unlikely. It could have been anything. But again, it's controversial. So anyway, Russell had kind of been helping me along because he was at the time he was kind of getting into advanced classes, formal training. And I asked him, I said, listen, I people are getting bent out of shape because I'm asking questions like this, but what's with these esoteric targets? And he told me, he goes, do some research, they've been looked into, and some of the things you're describing is similar to what's happened to some of these pioneers that experimented with them in the past. Pat Price and Ingo Swann, they had similar instances. So what I came to just accept is I really truly believe that that's what's happening, is a part of your consciousness is going through the target. And if you can make that stretch of to believe that, then you go into thinking, well, if that's the case, because I've perceived humans at targets. Like when I did the Hoover Dam, I saw visually behind my eyelids, I could see people pointing like tourists and stuff, And I'm like, oh, this is so cool. But obviously they could not see me. You know what I mean? They can't see just consciousness out and, they can't see me. But what I realized is these ETs knew we were there looking at them. They had their scope of perception seemed to be beyond our own, because if they could perceive me remote viewing them, that's something. If somebody remote viewed me, I wouldn't know. I would have no way of knowing. So they literally knew we were there, which kind of blew my mind because they turned the tables on me down the road, and they assigned me a target that was an alien abduction from the past. And basically it was this abduction happened, blah, blah, blah. What actually happened? That's how it was written out on the paper. So I got my 4-digit target number. That's all I knew at the time. And I go into my session, and I see basically a couple of bodies. I see, when I say see, I mean perceive, because you're seeing with your consciousness. You're not really seeing with your eyes. But
is there an image though? I mean,
yeah, it's an image.
Okay.
It's and it's like you're watching a movie behind your eyelids. It's a little darker. You know what I mean? It's very clear, but just a little darker. But it's like you're watching a video behind your eyelids. That's what it seems like. You're watching a scene play out. Does
it feel like a dream at all? I mean,
No.
Is there any part of that?
It's very. What happens is you'll be surprised. That's the main difference between like something you could like imagine, but when you're having this experience, things happen that surprise you. For instance, you're staring out at a black, you're just staring at the back of your eyelids, just focusing on this 4-digit number. And it's like, the closest I can describe it to is like back in the 90s, they had these 3D paintings that you could stare at and eventually an image would pop out of it. It's kind of similar to that, but everything's moving around. People are moving. It's like you're watching a scene behind your eyes. So eventually, they hated targets like that, and I only gave them a couple. But so eventually, they gave me that target, and I saw a blinking, flashing light, reminding me of like a strobe light. I saw a couple bodies on the ground, and I saw these 2 alien grays. I mean, what you would describe is typically, an alien gray looking dudes. And it was like they were looking right at me. They had both turned their heads, tilted, blinked. I could see them blinking, as if to say, what are you doing here? So immediately I come out of the, I pull my blindfold up and stop the session because it was just so bizarre. So what it made me realize, though, is okay, these entities seem to not only perceive me, okay, in my hypnagogic state, but they perceive me in the past. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that just kind of like, well, what does that mean? What does that mean time is? You know, if you could accept that, okay, you just went back to this location at this one moment in time during an abduction to see, and you happen to spot these ETs looking back at you, and let's make it a stretch and say that they are perceiving you. What does that mean time is? You know what I mean? Like, time may not even be linear. It doesn't seem like, if you could do this, you know, we perceive it that way, but maybe it's really not, you know. It just opens a lot of questions. Bizarre.
Yeah, it does open a lot of questions. You know, my question, and really this, I mean, it seems so trivial, but to me, the number would, I don't know, it's the way my brain works. It goes 100 miles an hour all the time, and it would seem to be that number would be a hindrance. But then again, I mean, to me, I guess, where do you start? I mean, there's got to be a starting place.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just close your eyes and just, I mean, there's got to be something.
And that's why, first of all, I kept it to 4 digits because I figured it's you need some kind of focal point.
Is that your technique then with the 4-digit number?
No, I believe they used it. I don't know how many digits they used, but they used coordinates in controlled remote viewing. And I believe they did, but looking back at it though, in extended remote viewing, you probably could just say, or think to yourself, I'm going after Dave's current target. You probably don't even need to focus on that number in particular. But I kept it short because when you start to get in that hypnagogic state, you're right. You know, if you have too many numbers, was it 1451? Was it 1431? Because you're starting to get, into kind of a loopy state because you're waiting for something for the show to start, the way I used to describe it. But that's just the way I set it up. And I believe, you know, we're talking 3 years ago, but I believe I got that from, I think that's how they did it, I believe. But that's how they do controlled remote viewing in a similar fashion. So I knew you needed a focal point. And I knew that they use this hemisync to kind of get you into that hypnagogic state. So to be honest, when we first started, we didn't even use a hemisync. We just put a blindfold on and just quieted our mind. And we were getting results that way as well. But it seemed like the hemisync was getting us there quicker. You know what I'm saying? It kind of helped get your mind into that state faster. Because when it worked, it was great. I mean, it just was amazing. But, you know, you have to go into it knowing I could sit here for 45 minutes and nothing may happen. You have to be really super relaxed to kind of get into that mindset.
Well, to me, that's remarkable that that can even happen at all. And I've never tried it. It's been, you know, since you and I have met, and you have suggested that I do a show on that. Of course, I've been thinking about it the whole time. Let me ask you this: you'd mentioned the Monroe Institute. I know they charge like $2,000 or something like that and have some kind of program, but is it remote viewing or do they do some sort of conscious exploration? I don't know the difference.
Well, okay, so I'll kind of lay it out like this. When you're doing controlled remote viewing, which is kind of like when the government did extended as well, but when you do controlled remote viewing, you're writing on a piece of paper, you're wide awake, and you're kind of taking, you're just kind of taking a taste of the target. Is how kind of Joe McMonagle would describe probing a target. You're kind of just taking a small impressions, like very small descriptors, and then you're building it up. So there's the first stage, you do an ideogram, which is just kind of a line, and you kind of probe that, and then you get into descriptors. You're kind of slowly building up the target. In extended remote viewing, like at the Monroe, you're just going full blown to the target. So if you're doing controlled remote viewing, a part of your consciousness is taking like a dip into the target. When you're doing, like at the Monroe Institute, you're kind of immersing your whole consciousness into that target. So instead of just getting these small impressions at a time, which is really informational, controlled remote viewing on paper, I mean, you can get 30 pages of data, 60 pages of data. If you're an operational viewer, you can get all kinds of data on the target. When you're doing it like the Monroe style, it's more like you just walked in the room. You know what I mean? So you're not like getting almost this factual stuff. You're just getting like you just opened up a window and looked in, and that's what you're seeing. So you're getting a more immersive experience, like you're at the target, but it's where controlled remote viewing is more informational, So the paper controlled remote viewing was really, they use that a lot in the military because, if they want to know something about a target, a classified target or something in another government, they can get pages and pages of data using that modality of remote viewing. But like I said in the beginning, like when I did the Hemisync in the Monroe kind of style, it seemed easy on paper at the time to be able to pull that off, knowing what I knew, which wasn't much.
Right.
If we get any experience, let's try it this way. Since then, I mean, I've been pretty much focused on controlled remote viewing for quite some time now, and I want to be trained for that because it's when you go operational, you could just use it for so many applications, new sciences, helping find missing persons cases, just
lottery numbers.
That's another. You can do that, but it's a whole other way of. That's associative remote viewing, they call it.
All right, I'm looking that up now. Go ahead. I don't mean to interrupt you, David. But go, please.
No, it's fine. When you do, the problem is like numbers are like a concept for us. You can't say to somebody, what does a number 3 feel like? You know what I mean? You can't. So what you have to do is in the tasking, you have to set it up to where like, okay, lottery number, the number 3 is a dog, the number 4 is a tree, and number 6 is of this or that. So it works, and people have used it that way.
That's a hell of an answer, though. I mean, that's a really good answer, and I like that. Because, I mean, a lot of people, I'm assuming that do look into this for that reason. Now, what about a target that you know nothing about? You want to find where North Korea has hidden its latest weapon of mass destruction. So how would you go about that? Okay, so probably what they would do is, now here's the thing about remote viewing. So you're trying to find this location. Well, we'll describe it for you. Okay, well, you don't know what the target is, but here's what you're describing. Let's say the bunk, it's in a bunker, in a cave somewhere. Okay, well, I feel like these metallic cylindrical objects, like the bombs or whatever, I'm getting a sense of rocky walls and stuff like that. So it'll get you so far. It's going to help you, figure out that it's in a cave somewhere, But they have what they also incorporated into remote viewing, which is called dowsing, where it's a whole other thing. But it's you'll have a map, and you'll have the target will be whatever. You don't know what the target is, but you'll have you see them like water witches kind of do it. You have like a pendulum in your hand, and you go over the map, and you get what they refer to it as the signal, okay? And it's wherever the information is coming from. But what you'll find is like your body will kind of just on its own identify a location that you're looking for on that map. So it's a similar kind of idea. It's all kind of stemming from the same place. Like you have access to this information. You're just trying to get your subconscious mind and your conscious mind to kind of work together, which is typically in your day-to-day life, they just kind of never really directly communicate.
So that's like Paul H. Smith, he's done stuff like that where they were looking for drugs or something, and he remote viewed. It was on a boat, this or that, and then he was able to dowse over a map and find roughly where the shipping containers where the drugs were on the boat. So he talks about that in his book a little bit. But that's how you would kind of use that application. You would remote view it and use dowsing. Same thing for like treasure hunting. They'll remote view it. They'll collate all the data, whatever they can get out of it, and then if they need to narrow it down further, they'll try dowsing.
How are they teaching people in the military to do that? Does it mirror that in some way that you just described to me?
Paul teaches dowsing. I don't know much about dowsing. I want to say Russell might have taken that class too. I'm not sure. But that was something that they taught, along with remote viewing in the program. Because basically, Ingo Swann and Hal Funtoff were collaborating to try and make this step-by-step process to remote view, in a sense, to anyone, not just a super psychic. Ingo was so good, he could just stare off into space and he would start getting impressions of the target. He didn't even need to close his eyes. He didn't need to listen to hemisync. He was just that good. But what he found out is if you slowly open the target step by step, in these stages, they call them stages in controlled remote viewing, you're kind of like following this roadmap, and it kind of gets you, step by step to the target. Where you start out with small pieces of data, and as you get further along in the session, you start to get bigger chunks of information, and the target just kind of surfaces. There's 6 stages in controlled remote viewing. By stage 6, you are modeling the target out of clay. That's how immersed you get into it.
So what do you recommend? I mean, if somebody wanted to pursue this, obviously there's so much free information on the internet, and you picked up a lot there, but I imagine you're paying for books.
Oh yeah. You can get a taste of it. For if you do your homework and you do some research, you can get a taste of what it entails. Meaning, like, perfect example, Paul Smith, he teaches, or he's got a remote perception DVD out there. It's like $100. It's $200 regularly, but I think it's on sale. I'm not sure, but it was for Christmas. And it'll get you to stage 3. It'll give you a good understanding, a working understanding of up to stage 3. And that will get you impressions of the target. And by the end, you're writing them a summary and you're drawing a sketch of the target. So you can get a lot of information from a target just doing up to stage 3 properly. That's the program I'm trying to get in. His company's RVIS, Remote Viewing Instructional Services. And he was trained by Ingo Swann himself. So but this COVID thing, I think he's waiting for that to kind of die down a bit. But if you're into it, that's where I would suggest you go. He's kind of like the dude right now. His program is kind of known as the gold standard. If you want to, if you really want to learn control remote viewing the way Ingo Swann taught it, he's the guy to go to.
Lynn Buchanan really well, and describe for those who are listening that don't know what the military application, what he was involved in. Can you kind of take a few minutes and describe that?
Well, he was in how it happened was so Ingo Swann taught, I think it was like 5 people, I believe initially. And basically, and Paul was one of them, and Paul ended up writing a manual. So after Ingo Swann taught those 5 people, Ingo was kind of out of it, And at that point, people in the unit taught, Lynn Buchanan, who else? Dave Morehouse. And they would work operational targets. I mean, I don't know what all he's done, but things would come in, and they would all work on them. We're trying to get intel on this. Remote viewing was a real cheap way to get information, about a different country, for whatever reason. But they had their tasking was, varied in a lot of ways. What lended specifically for them, I can't think of anything that comes to mind, but just various things. We're trying to find drugs on a ship. Can you help us out? They even did experiments in like precognitive stuff. What's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to be in tomorrow's newspaper, stuff like that. So, but again, I'm sure probably some of the stuff may be classified, so I'm really not sure, but.
Well, it's interesting that he actually says, on his Facebook page, he worked at the U.S. Army from January 28th, 1957 to January 28th, 1993, and worked in guided missiles. He's a chaplain's assistant, Russian and German and Mongolian linguist, and controlled remote viewer and trainer. And a lot of that was declassified. So, I mean, there's real information about that available.
Oh, yeah, there is. There's a lot of information out there on it. And he was I think he was a linguist, I think at one point in the military. But, a handful of these guys got the opportunity to do this. There wasn't many of them. And, the government went ahead and, let's give it a shot. SRI was doing some research. The government was realizing that they were getting results. SRI was getting results. So they wanted to develop something that was, usable. And, Paul Smith, Lynn Buchanan was in the unit, David Morehouse, Ed, what's his last name? I can't think of it. But Bill Ray, and some of these people are still teaching. Like Bill Ray and Paul Smith, they still teach out of Paul's class, RVIS. And what's great, if you go on, like if you're even mildly interested in this, and you go on, if you're on Facebook, there's a group called Remote Viewing /Remote Perception. And if you get on there, they will give you, things to get you started. And what's nice is you can ask them questions, and there's guys from the military program that actually, that did this. I mean, that are on there, and they'll reach out to you sometimes and kind of help you along. And they're really good people.
Yeah, great people. Interesting stuff too. So here we come to the part of the program where I had actually given David a target, and he had a while to investigate this target. And do you want to kind of describe your process and how you went forward investigating the target that I provided you?
Well, first of all, I want to tell everybody I begged you not to make me do this, because I'm like, Cam, what if I'm off? I mean, I could probably. we wouldn't have talked about it. We would talk about your wife and what she's been viewing. So, yeah.
But go ahead.
So I said, all right, I said, just give me, we'll give it a shot, for fun. We'll see what happens. Give me a person, place, or thing, anywhere in time. Hopefully, something verifiable, and I'll take a look at it. So he gave me a 4-digit code, or 4-digit reference number, target number, whatever you want to call it. And I did a little bit of an extended session. I did a few extended sessions. It's kind of busy around here, so I did what I could. So I did that, and then I did up to a stage 3 in controlled remote viewing, just to kind of see if I could pull anything more out of it. But basically, I in the extended session, I got a perception of a ton of trees, and kind of like on a hillside, thicket of trees, kind of a misty, and then I saw it was like I saw a bunch of land and like water, and it was like my perception got completely pulled back of all this whole area. And I don't know why it happened like that. That's just the way it
Describe
did.
that.
So I don't know
Describe that, because that's important, I think.
Okay. Well, it was kind of like if you're an aerial view of just a forest area, and then all of a sudden you say it's a camera, then that camera panned back like hundreds and hundreds of feet, like this big foresty water area. So I don't know if it was like my perception was showing me that for some reason, like it's telling me like this whole area or this property. I don't know why it did that, but that's how I perceived it. And then during my S3 sessions or my controlled remote viewing sessions, I had basically the same stuff. I felt like out of my ideogram, I might have gotten a little bit of a structure, but it seemed like my attention was so drawn to the surrounding areas. I didn't have much time to investigate that. But that's basically what I saw. And I kind of wrote up a little summary, drew some sketches for you.
So when you did this more than once, did it always look the same? Were you always getting the same impression?
Well, the visual came. I haven't extended remote viewed in a while. I've been mainly doing controlled remote viewing, but I figured since this is what we're going to be talking about, I do it that way. So the visual came relatively early, which, so immediately I'm like, this has got to be like an analytical overlay. This is just imagination. So I'm like, but anyway, that's kind of what I kept kind of getting that impression, like, well, this has got to have something to do with it. This is what I'm getting, so this is what I'm going to tell you. So I got that relatively early. I went back in a couple times to see if I could pull anything else out, and I didn't get anything else out that way. So then I went to controlled remote viewing to get a little bit more out of it. But basically, that was kind of dominating my session, was just that surrounding area.
So I've seen your drawings before, and they're terrible. Yeah, no, I don't mean to sound that way, but you're not an artist. But
no.
So this is interesting to me because I'm looking at them, and there's one that says I think it says my perception gives over. Does that say my perception or reception?
Perception.
My perception goes over this huge amount of property. It feels like what? Trees next to a body of water, river or stream.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this curvy trees and curvy, and it must be water or stream. And then you give me another, it says end session, and it's sort of trees and some curves. And I'm wondering what that is. Same thing?
Well, you get like little flashes of, it's like just a quick image, and I just try and capture that, those few images that I got, out of those sessions. And I tried to, just to get, again, it's not like an artistic rendition by any means, but just gives you an idea. Like, okay, there's land here, there's trees here, this is water.
But this is going somewhere. And then another drawing, it says a dense thicket of trees on a hillside, and it says feels kind of high up.
Yeah.
So there's a feeling there. It's not. It's high up, but kind of.
Well, that's from where I'm. When you go into a target like this, you don't know where you're gonna get dropped into. You know what I mean? So at my perspective, where I was looking, I'm seeing tree tops. I'm seeing like misty.
Right.
So from that perception, that's what it like.
Misty could be anything. It could be smoke. It could be fog.
Could be smoke. Yeah.
And then there's a description. It says target summary feels like I'm picking up on a land or a land-based target. I primarily sense a natural setting. I perceived a dense thicket of trees on a hill or a mountainside. I sensed a land-water interface. During extended session, I saw a large expanse of water and trees. I felt that what might be involved. Structure might be involved in the target, but perception felt dominated by the landscape. Okay, so let's stop there. Now, I'm going to interpret this a bit because I want to pick the pieces out of there that are very, very accurate. Now, you tell me in there that there's a water feature, but to me it sounds like you get the sense that this water is broken up in a certain way, or it could be a large body, it might be a smaller. That's interesting to me.
Yeah.
That's very, very interesting to me. And then green, lots of green and dense thicket of trees. Like, when I read this, I could picture, I know what it is, the target is, but I could picture, water, jungle, deep trees. And then, then we go into target descriptors, words. What was that word I asked you earlier today?
Curvy.
Curvy. Yeah, curvy. And then the next one really, really threw me. You got all this green and then gray. What's that? Any further description, or is it just a color or a name?
That was, that was in my stage 3 session. That was on paper. You get colors, and even on your best day, you're going to get stuff that relates to the target. You're going to get stuff that doesn't. But my guess was, now, I didn't look into it enough, and even if I did, I wouldn't know for sure. But it could be just I picked up that color, and it could be a rocky color. It could have been that little bit of whatever that structure might have been. Could have been that color. I don't know.
Right.
But it's something that came up. Anything that comes up on paper, you just write it down.
So also on here you have long, rigid, angled, pitched, hilly, blue, white, stretched, elongated, swirling, rocky, wooden, wavy, flowing, wrapping, natural, jagged, green, brown, wet, arching, cloudy, winding, hard, red. Does that say hard and red? Stretching, broad, expansive, pooling, running, windy. So you have water like a river, water like a bigger body of water, and then pooling, running. Mm-hmm. Do you want to see what this is? Do you have your camera or your computer in front of you?
I don't, but I'll look. I can look it up after if you want.
So it's on the website. I built a page, and so basically an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that I printed out for your target. I put Dave Powell's target, the number 1451, and a picture of it. And I also put the Taal volcano erupted in Batangas, Philippines, January 12th, 2020. So that's interesting because it was very green and very hilly, and then in one day became gray, and it alternates back and forth. There's pooling and running of red lava. It could be over 36 eruptions over several hundred years. It was gray, and being in the Philippines, the plants grow back so quickly, and it's just alternating gray and so I think it's pretty remarkable. I mean, and you said something about perceiving a structure in the middle. Well, what it is it was one of the biggest volcanoes in the world, which collapsed inside of itself. So it has a lake in the crater, and then a cone in the middle of the lake, and then there's a lake in the middle of that cone. So the shoreline on all of that stuff is super curvy, and it's going all over the place. And then the lake, the outer banks of the outer lake, really curvy shorelines, and you get a huge myriad of different sort of features because it's volcanic, and there's just stuff. I mean, some active volcanism. This is in the Philippines. This is on an island? Yeah, this is on the main island in the Philippines, and it's the Batangas. It's at Batangas, Philippines. It's just south of Manila, and it's. I was there in May of 2020, or I'm sorry, I was there in May of 2019, and then it erupted in January 12th of 2020, and turning most of it gray.
I should have given you my analytical overlays too. One of my analytical overlays was island. I should have told you.
Really? So
yeah, you have analytical overlays, which basically is usually it's just assumptions, but
right.
Sometimes it's accurate.
But and that was just you not really wanting to go for it. I felt the whole time you really didn't want to stick your neck out and be wrong.
Oh, I didn't. I did not at all, because I'm like, people are gonna, this guy's gonna miss the target, and they're not gonna be interested in remote viewing. I'm like, I don't want, don't let me be that guy, because But yeah, I'm just glad I made some sight contact. That's good news.
But when I think it's just super interesting that you describe all this greenery, and then your first target description is gray.
Yeah.
After talking about all this green, and obviously blue water.
And that happens sometimes in sessions too. And what happens is, like, I did a target once where it was basically I was getting all these dense impressions, like, oh, it's metallic, it's hard, it's dense. And then right after that, I get the impression pillowy. And I'm like, ooh, that doesn't make sense to me. I don't want to write that down because I got all these hard tactile impressions, but I write it down anyway. And then once I got the feedback, it was a car, but it had like 6 inches of snow on top of it. So I'm assuming the pillowy was probably the snow.
Right.
But that's kind of like a big part of this is getting out of the way of your analytical mind and not fearing being wrong, and just write down what you get, and that's it. But for some reason, sometimes I'll go off task or whatever, because something like that'll happen, and I'll be like, I'm resistant to write it down, because for some reason I think I have some sense already of what the target might be, and I have no idea what it is.
And I'm sure it's easy to throw yourself off by second guessing, because you're thinking suddenly that it couldn't be that for one reason or another. But you said gray and then blue and white. I mean, the water there is blue, and there's also green water, but in the center crater, but a lot of white. I mean, it catches clouds, and shortly after the last eruption, the center crater filled up with water again, and lots of white clouds hanging in there all the time, and it's you had flowing lava in there. There's natural jagged stuff, greens, browns, and arching.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a couple of craters, but it's just all these arches. It just up and down, and you did say cloudy, winding, hard and red, stretching, broad, expansive, pooling, and a lot of pooling. I mean, there was a huge pool of water that accumulated since January 2000, and can be kind of windy there at times. So I think you did really well.
Thanks, Cam. And I believe in the one sketch, I drew like a faint, misty something. I mean, I knew something was there. I didn't know what it was, but I drew like a faint cloud up in the sketch with the trees going up on the hillside, because I saw it. I didn't know what it, I didn't know if it was mist or dew or smoke or what, but I saw it there, so I figured I better write it down.
I think too that one of the important things too on this volcano is the fact that historically, now I put a specific date on there, so there was still a lot of gray left, and but one of the things that is really the way to describe it is the fact that it constantly is in change. It changes daily, to a degree, but every so often, when they have these eruptions, there's dramatic change, like in 1911 to 1965, 1977, and 2008, 9, 10, 11, 2019, And it's, you can't, I know that basically the information that you try to pick up, you try to be as close as possible. But the fact that you didn't spend a whole lot of time on this, I felt that you described it fairly well.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah. It's hard to sit down. I got a full house here, so it's hard to get a moment's peace to sit down for a session some days.
Well, and this was something too that, was just kind of off the cuff. We really threw this together this week, and that's what we had planned, and I think it worked out really well. And I was totally impressed just by kind of where you hit the was outside and water, and then I saw gray, and that blew my mind a little bit. And I think that it would just about anybody who was interested in learning more about this. And one of the things too, to me, that would be so powerful, again, would be me trying to second guess myself because of things that just don't seem to go together, especially in this case, because, this is a living, breathing piece of earth, and it doesn't really translate well. Even if you try to describe it to somebody who's never seen a volcano, they would hardly know what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's a left brain, right brain aspect to remote viewing, and they kind of work together. And this right brain information starts to come through, and that's when, in the learning process, it's really part of the struggle, because even probably at some degree at the operational level, because it's just in our nature. You don't want to be wrong. And I do this all the time, is where, like I just described, where I'll get something that doesn't jive with my other descriptors, so I'm not going to accredit it. Well, you have no idea what's there. You have, until you get the feedback, you just need to go with what you get.
Is it a sensory perception that you're born with, or do you develop, or both?
You're born with the innate ability, but like anything most things, I should say, in life, the more practice, the better you get. There's some people that are really just naturals. When I was starting to do this with Joe and my wife, I thought they were both blowing me out of the water at the time, but looking back, I think we were about the same. It's just it just took me longer to kind of get into that mindset. And with controlled remote viewing, it's a J curve. So you have what's called the first timer effect. So when you first start remote viewing and you start getting into it, you're gonna have some good hits, because your analytical side of your mind doesn't know what's going on. You're getting this information, you haven't kind of, you kind of like almost build up a resistance to it. So in the beginning, you do really well, and then that drops off, and then you kind of build it back up. So, people take a little bit of time and look into it. They will have success. There's nothing special going on over here. I mean, we all had, what surprised me the most is we all had really good hits. Which like Ingo talked about in his writing, this is a human ability that we all have. Just like anything else, some people are better at it than others, but with practice, you could get, pretty good at this.
So backing up just a little bit, so what we did was we set up an experiment, and I took a one-page piece of paper, and I typed out the Taal volcano in the Philippines, which is south of Manila, and the date of its last eruption, and the number 1451, which was David's target number. So that was our experiment, and what David provided me were, I believe it's four sheets of paper describing what he was able to see from just that number that I gave him. So that number was associated with a volcano. If you want to see this, and I hope you do, I want you to go to the website, because the website has all of this, and David's picture as well. And the website is www.myalienlifepodcast.com. And when you get there, click on My Alien Life, and there's about 4 places you can click on at the homepage, and scroll down just a little bit, and you can see where we have David Powell's study that he put together this week. It's about halfway down the page. And it says remote viewing with David Powell. And what you'll see there is a picture of David. And then on the left, it's the target page that I provided. It says David Powell's target, 1451, the Taal volcano, erupted in Batangas, Philippines, January 12th, 2020. And then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pictures of the Taal volcano. Probably worth looking at from Google Earth if you get a chance. You can see the layout, because it's a rather unique place with a huge lake which surrounds a cone, and then a volcanic cone, and then inside that cone there's another lake and another cone inside there. And so it's a pretty amazing volcano. Used to be one of the biggest in the world. It's collapsed within itself, but it's still active and still erupts regularly. And if you didn't know, the Philippines are made up of a chain of volcanoes. And so, yeah, he kind of nailed it, I believe. It was interesting for me to think about this during the afternoon. My thought process about so I'm thinking about you doing this, and my thought process all the time was that you knew. I just kept thinking all day that you knew what this was. That I knew I didn't tell you it was a volcano, but I kept thinking you knew what it was. And so right when you started, I felt like you knew what it was, but I just hadn't provided you with the pictures that I had, and I thought, well, he has probably seen it by now and looked it up to see what it looked like. And so I was thinking the whole time that you knew what it was. So it really wasn't surprising. But then when I got the pictures back from you, I started looking at these, and no, you didn't know what it was. And they were fairly, generic and very little description until you got to your description page. And again, there was that word gray, and I was like, wow, it's, and it's a gray structure in the middle of it, which it really is. And you weren't very certain that it was a building, but it was, something was there. You could see that. Mm-hmm. You could see some sort of shape sticking out.
Yeah. I knew something was there. I just didn't. I didn't investigate any further with that. But I'll take whatever hits I get, because I do this. I do all the time. But the hits are great. Interesting. And I'm just, because I said, the only parameters I gave you was anything, any person, place, or thing, anywhere in time. I believe it's the only parameters I gave you.
And that's huge. I mean, that's a huge scope to work with. I mean, that's not, and it could have been a person. It could have been a hamster. It could have been, who knows who. Yeah. So, I mean, to me, it's remarkable that you picked a green, mountainy water thing. So, I mean, right away. So, I mean, you could have been a suit of armor in the year 1650 in England, So, or a bus, or a or a football. I mean, I wanted to be a little bit more creative, and I thought I would throw a curveball at you, being that that's a changing object. And I don't know, it may be more powerful when it is something like an object that changes, and you are getting a bunch of images that are related. I think it would be helpful. I think a real small object and something insignificant would be tough to pinpoint. But next time it might be a suit of armor. But I'd like to do it again. Now
Sure.
that you have the confidence that you're not going to blow it. We're not going to make you look bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I got lucky. Like I said, I got lucky.
So what else is coming up? What do you got? Are you continuing to study? If so, what does that look like? Where do you want to get with it?
I really, what I would like to do, there's all kinds of stuff that operational viewers are doing with it. They do problem solving, just a magnitude, and that's really what I'd like to do is to get my training done, which will take me a few years, and then go into operational remote viewing and see where that takes me. And I finally, I'm ready to do it. I've been trying to get into RVIS, but again, with the COVID, things are shut down. But a lot of these members of Stargate are, they're getting older, they're wanting to retire. So it's a huge opportunity to be taught by them. I don't want this to, people need to realize, I think it's important that people need to realize that everybody has this capability. I think it's a huge thing that most people just they don't get it. They just they don't want to waste time or believe that you could do it. And, but with a little bit of time and effort, it's amazing. It'll really blow your mind.
Very, very good. So my guest tonight has been David Powell. David, you're in Florida. I wish you the best of the best and a happy new year. I mean, yesterday was quite a day, and hopefully we can recover and be an even stronger nation. And I'm so thankful that I had this chance to network with you, and over the last year, you've thrown me some great leads for some great guests. I look forward to speaking to you again, David Powell. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, Cam. All right, buddy. Take care.
You can find my website at www.myalienlifepodcast.com, and please subscribe to my latest downloads at iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and at podbean.com. And please follow me and like me on Facebook and Twitter. My Alien Life is written and produced for broadcast at Studio 254 in the Northern Rocky Mountains. The music you are hearing is produced and created by Elion. You can find all Elion's work online at Heart Dance Records.